The Vikings have a rough history. When your hobbies include raiding monasteries, enslaving villagers, and colonizing England, people probably won't see you in a friendly manner. But was that all they did? Or is the truth more complicated? Does everyone have their coats on? Because we're diving right into the cold winters of the Viking Age. I checked every source about Vikings that humans have, and you'd be surprised at the things we can take away from their history. So let's make it simple. Let's start from the beginning. The Vikings come from Scandinavia, a region of northern Europe that includes modern-day Sweden, Norway, and Iceland. The so-called Viking Age refers to the years between the 8th and the 11th century. Vikings didn't refer to all people from Scandinavia, though. Hey man, you a Viking? What? No, but you live here. Yeah? So that means you are a Viking. That's not how it works, my dude. Vikings, roughly translated from Old Norse, means seafaring warrior or sea expedition. It can refer to a person or the act of seafaring. It's a job title and nothing more. But wait, what about the big, bulky men with horned helmets and long, blonde locks that burnt down villages? Well, not quite. We have to take away the helmet and slim him down significantly. There, that's better. What about the blonde hair? Those long, luscious locks were a reality, but not purely because of genetics, like many people think. Norse people as a whole were very hygienic, and that meant bleaching their hair to keep head lice away. So the whole Viking style is just heavily exaggerated? Pretty much. Historical distortion is easy when we're over 1,000 years removed from the source. I mean, I can't even remember what I had for breakfast today. And I'm still having it. Vikings also weren't all under one king or empire, and while much of the technology, myths, and culture was the same throughout Scandinavia, Vikings came from many different tribes and took to different areas to plunder and eventually settle. They did pillage and plunder, but more than that, they established trade routes, set up ports, and settled throughout Europe. What? But what about the numerous written records of the horrors they inflicted? Oh, yeah. But unfortunately, while the Vikings were literate, they didn't really write down most of the history of their epic raids. So we mostly only have one side of the story. Heathen men came and miserably destroyed God's church in Lindisfarne with plunder and slaughter. Those horned fools were as strong as an ox and destroyed everything they touched. Clearly, they are the spawn of the devil. They're a bunch of big bullies and I hate them. Oh, I see the problem. History is often written by the victors that portray themselves as the heroes. In the Vikings' case, however, history was mostly written by the losers, who obviously have some pretty big issues with the Vikings. Vikings weren't motivated by religion or violent delights, and they usually went after monasteries because monks had huge stashes of gold and silver and weren't trained in fighting. It was a matter of easy pickings for them. A lot of what we know about the Vikings and their seafaring expeditions comes not from the often written sources, but archaeological evidence. We know the Vikings made it all the way to North America, only because archaeologists have discovered tools and remnants of Viking settlements throughout eastern Canada. This is pretty cool. We keep sailing to all these interesting places. Should we maybe write it down to remember it? Jeez, man, just live in the moment. Look. What the hell are Europeans? I don't know. This kinda seems like an important point in history, you know? How will people know what we've done? Fine. We'll leave some stuff behind for our people to find in the future. It definitely would have helped if they had documented things a bit better. History is confusing. Most people don't really stop to think, hey, this might be important for the future, I should carefully and unbiasedly document it. So, if I document every moment of my life, I'll be in the history books? Right. So, we do know most things about them, like their boats, which were designed to be used both on the open seas and inland rivers. My sick new design is going to make Thor so impressed. Why are there oars and sails? It's not always windy. We'll need pure manpower to get us where we need to go. Nice. This will make us look super intimidating when we arrive at a village. They had a shallow hull that made it easy for the Vikings to travel all over Europe and establish trade on seaports and within landlocked countries. We know they did settle in places such as Ukraine, Ireland, and France. These were important places to trade, and the Vikings were avid traders, especially in the later parts of the Viking Age. But in many of those places, they had very little cultural influence once they had settled, and many times they ended up abandoning their Norse religion and adopting the local ones. So, we have 9 realms and a pantheon of gods. There's Odin, Thor, and Sol, and Vali, and Yggdrasil, and Mimir, and I should have written this down. Huh, wanna try this instead? And abandon our traditions? Why not? Our knowledge of Norse mythology is shaky at best. But there are other aspects of their culture we do know. Vikings, as warriors and traders, had traditions that reflected their seafaring ways. One way is through funerals for fallen Vikings. Oh, I read about this. Please tell me at least this is accurate. Yeah, but again, pop culture might get it wrong. Sending a warrior off to the afterworld in a burning boat did happen. We have written records describing such funerals in detail, but this wasn't the norm for all Vikings, only the highest-ranking members of the seafarers. And even when Vikings were placed in boats and set on fire, it mostly happened on land, not by shooting arrows of fire onto the boat. Man, most of what I learned about the Vikings was wrong. They aren't nearly as cool as I thought. Watch your mouth, young man, or you may lose your tongue. Not everything you know about them was wrong, but a wise man once said, "Many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view." And here, the truth you learned was from the monks, who were just one side of the story. So everyone, the monks, archaeologists, and even the ones we usually trust, have a bias? Exactly. Most written sources like diary entries or online media are written by humans after all. We can't rely on a handful of them to give us the full picture. After all, we all know what humans are. They're weird oxygen-breathing creatures. I think he meant they're flawed, like us. And until we've got a time machine, that'll remain the case. But don't worry, I'm working on that time machine. Good night, Confucius.